Have you ever wished you could just disappear? Not die, but simply become invisible for a moment. You say something in a meeting, and the room goes silent. You tell a joke, and no one laughs. You try to be charming, and you feel clumsy and awkward. And in that moment, a hot, prickly feeling floods your face, your stomach drops, and the only thought in your mind is, I want to get out of here. You want the ground to open up and swallow you whole. You want to rewind time by 10 seconds. This feeling, this sudden, overwhelming desire to cease to exist, this is the feeling of shame. It is perhaps the most painful and most secret of all human emotions. We will admit to being sad. We will even admit to being angry, but we will rarely admit to being ashamed. Because shame feels different. It doesn't feel like an emotion that is happening to you. It feels like a revelation of what you are. It feels like, for a brief, horrifying moment, the mask has slipped, and the whole world has seen the ugly, stupid, or inadequate person you truly are underneath. And so you spend your life desperately trying to keep that mask in place. You live in a state of constant, low-grade vigilance. You rehearse conversations in your head before you have them. You analyze interactions for hours after they're over, dissecting every word, every look, searching for signs that you made a fool of yourself. You avoid situations where you might be judged. You stay quiet in meetings. You turn down invitations to parties. You avoid asking for that raise, all because the risk of a moment of shame feels more dangerous than the certainty of a life of quiet regret. You have built a prison for yourself, a small, safe, and deeply miserable prison, and the jailer is your own fear of being seen. But what if this feeling of shame, this secret sickness that you believe is a fundamental truth about your own worthlessness, is actually a lie, a profound misunderstanding of who and what you are? What if your shame is not a reflection of your true self, but a reflection of the parts of yourself you have been taught to hate? What if the path to freedom is not to build a better mask or to hide more effectively, but to finally have the courage to look at what you have been hiding? Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist who mapped the hidden territories of the human soul, understood the deep origins of shame. He saw it not as a personal failing, but as a consequence of the war we wage against our own nature. He knew that we all have parts of ourselves that we deem unacceptable, parts that we hide away in the darkness of our own minds. And he taught that shame is the fear that this darkness will be exposed to the light. But he also taught that it is only by facing this darkness that we can ever hope to become whole. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This video is a journey into that darkness. It is for you who are tired of living in the prison of your own shame, for you who feel like an imposter, constantly afraid of being found out, for you who long for the freedom to be yourself, without fear and without apology. Today we will use Jung's map to explore the secret landscape of your shame. We will identify its source, we will understand its power, and we will discover the difficult but liberating path to overcoming it. This will not be easy. It will require you to look at the parts of yourself you have spent a lifetime avoiding. But on the other side of that fear is the only authentic life you will ever have. Get ready to face your shame, and in doing so to finally find yourself. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Let's talk about where this shame comes from. It doesn't appear out of nowhere. It is built, piece by piece, throughout your life. Think of it like this. When you were born, you were whole. You were a complete human being with a full spectrum of feelings and impulses. You felt anger, you felt joy, you felt sadness, you felt neediness, you felt creativity, you felt aggression. It was all just you. But then the world began to teach you. Your parents, your teachers, your friends, society itself, they all started to give you messages about which parts of you were good and which parts were bad. When you got angry, they might have said, "Don't be naughty." When you were needy and cried for attention, they might have said, "Stop being a baby." When you were loud and spontaneous, "Calm down, be quiet." When you were sensitive, "Don't be so dramatic." Each of these messages was like a small judgment. And with each judgment, you learned that a certain part of your natural self was unacceptable. It was shameful. And what do you do with something you are ashamed of? You hide it. You push it down. You pretend it doesn't exist. Jung had a name for this collection of hidden, rejected parts of ourselves. He called it the shadow. Imagine that you are carrying an invisible bag on your back. Every time someone shamed you for a natural part of yourself, you took that part, your anger, your neediness, your spontaneity, your vulnerability, and you stuffed it into the bag. Over the years, that bag has gotten heavier and heavier and heavier. You have been carrying it for so long you have forgotten you are even carrying it. But you feel its weight every single day. It is the source of the tension in your shoulders, the anxiety in your gut, the weariness in your soul. Your entire life has become structured around one primary, unconscious goal: to make sure that no one ever sees what is in that bag. The fear that someone might glimpse the contents of your bag, that they might see the anger you have repressed, the neediness you have denied, the weirdness you have hidden. That fear is the feeling of shame. You are living in constant terror of being exposed, so you walk through the world with a stoop, weighed down by this invisible burden. You see other people who seem to walk so freely, so lightly, and you feel a stab of envy and resentment. You think, they must have an empty bag, but you are wrong. Everyone has a bag, everyone has a shadow. The difference is that some people are crushed by the weight of theirs, while others have learned to carry it. The person crippled by shame is the one who is still pretending the bag doesn't exist. They spend all of their energy hiding it, denying it, and being terrified of it. This denial is a full-time job. It is utterly exhausting. It forces you to live an inauthentic life, a life of constant self-monitoring and self-censorship. You can never truly relax, because you are always on guard, always afraid that a piece of your rejected self might slip out and reveal you for who you really are. The irony, the great tragedy that Jung pointed out, is that the more you push these parts into the darkness, the more powerful they become. They don't go away. They just fester. They turn into moods you can't explain, anxieties that appear out of nowhere, and patterns of self-sabotage that you can't seem to break. The bag doesn't just get heavier, it starts to leak. But to hide this leaking bag, you have had to become a master of disguise. You have had to construct a flawless, acceptable, good version of yourself to show to the world. In the next part, we will explore this mask, this persona, and how it has become the greatest ally of your shame. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. So there you are, carrying this heavy, invisible bag full of all the parts of yourself you have been taught to be ashamed of, the shadow. But you can't just walk around letting everyone see you stooped over in misery. You have to function in the world. You have to be accepted. You have to be liked. You have to be loved. So what do? You build a mask, a beautiful, smiling, competent, and completely artificial mask. Jung called this mask the persona. The persona is the you that you present to the world. It is the good employee, the loving partner, the responsible parent, the funny friend, the confident leader. It is the collection of socially acceptable traits that you have assembled to create a version of yourself that you believe the world will approve of. It is your public face, your resume, your social media profile. In itself, the persona is not a bad thing. It is a necessary tool for navigating social life. We all need a mask to interact with the world. You wouldn't talk to your boss in the same way you talk to your lover. You need the persona. The problem, the deep and painful problem that is the source of so much of your shame, begins when you forget that the mask is a mask. You start to believe that you are the persona, and you start to dedicate your entire life to the exhausting, full-time job of maintaining and polishing this facade. Think about how much of your energy this consumes, the sheer work of it. You have to always smile, even when you feel like crying. You have to always be agreeable, even when you violently disagree. You have to pretend to be confident, even when you are riddled with insecurity. You have to pretend to be strong and independent, even when you are desperately lonely and craving connection. You say yes when your whole being is screaming no. You say I'm fine when you are crumbling on the inside. Every one of these small, daily acts of self-betrayal is an act of reinforcing the persona. And every act of reinforcing the persona makes the gap between your mask and your true self even wider. This gap, this chasm between the person you pretend to be and the person you secretly fear you are, the one with the heavy bag, is the breeding ground of shame. It is the source of the imposter syndrome. You live in constant fear that someone will see behind the mask, that someone will notice the crack in your perfect facade, that they will see the truth, that you are not as confident, not as happy, not as put together as you pretend to be. And you believe that if they see this truth, they will reject you, they will abandon you, and you will be left exposed and alone with your shameful bag of rejected parts. So the mask that you built to connect with the world has become the very thing that isolates you. You are surrounded by people, but you feel profoundly alone because no one truly knows you. They only know your representative, your well-trained ambassador, your mask, and you can never truly receive love because any love or approval directed at the mask feels like a sham. It doesn't touch the real you, who is hiding, terrified, in the darkness behind it. The more you identify with the persona, the heavier the shadow becomes. Because for every good quality you add to your mask, you must repress its opposite. To be the kind person, you must repress your anger. To be the strong person, you must repress your vulnerability. To be the intelligent person, you must repress your confusion. The shadow becomes a vast and powerful kingdom of everything you are not allowed to be, and your shame is the warden of this inner prison. But this system is unstable. The repressed shadow does not stay quiet forever. It finds ways to make itself known, often by projecting itself onto the people around you. In the next part, we will explore how your shame forces you to see your own hidden demons in the faces of others. This internal system you've created is deeply unstable. You have the shining, perfect mask, the persona, on the outside, and the dark, heavy bag of rejected parts, the shadow, on the inside. And you are spending all of your life's energy trying to keep the two separate. But the energy of the shadow has to go somewhere. It is a powerful, dynamic force, and if you do not deal with it consciously, it will deal with you unconsciously. One of the primary ways it does this is through projection. Projection is one of Jung's most important and most practical concepts. It is an unconscious defense mechanism that allows you to avoid your own shame. It works like this because you cannot stand to see a certain bad quality in yourself. Your mind, in a clever act of self-deception, projects that quality onto someone else. You then see that quality in them, and you can hate it, judge it, and condemn it in them, all without ever having to face the terrifying fact that it is also a part of you. You are essentially fighting a proxy war with your own shadow, using other people as the battlefield. You see this happening everywhere, every single day. The person who is secretly and deeply insecure about their own intelligence often becomes a vicious critic of the stupidity of others. They will find logical flaws in every argument. They will scoff at others' opinions. They will belittle people for not being as smart as they are. They are not actually reacting to the other person. They are reacting to the stupid part of themselves that they have stuffed into their shadow bag and are now terrified of. By attacking it in others, they get a momentary feeling of relief, a feeling of superiority, but they are only strengthening the bars of their own inner prison. Consider the person who has repressed their own anger, who has built their entire persona around being nice, calm, and easygoing. This person is often intensely irritated and judgmental of anyone who expresses passion, who gets into arguments, who shows any sign of assertiveness. They will call them aggressive, dramatic, or out of control. They are not actually judging the other person's behavior, they are judging the anger that lives, repressed and boiling, inside their own shadow bag. They are ashamed of their own anger, so they must condemn it wherever they see it. Think about your own life. Who are the people who irritate you the most? What qualities in others do you find absolutely intolerable? Is it laziness, neediness, arrogance, stupidity, weakness? According to Jung, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Your strongest negative reactions are often a giant, flashing arrow pointing directly at a part of your own repressed shadow. The thing you hate most in others is often the thing you are most ashamed of in yourself. This mechanism of projection is the source of so much human conflict. It is the root of prejudice, of gossip, of self-righteousness. It is a way for us to feel good and right by making someone else bad and wrong. But it is a temporary fix that comes at a terrible price. It keeps you blind. It keeps you trapped in a world of your own distorted perceptions. You are not interacting with real people. You are interacting with the disowned parts of your own psyche that you have hung like costumes upon them. And as long as you are doing this, you can never become a whole person. You are living a fractured existence, at war with the world because you are at war with yourself. Your shame is not just a feeling, it has become the lens through which you see all of reality. But there is a way out. The way out is not to find better people to project onto. The way out is to stop projecting. And that requires the single most courageous act a human being can perform, the act of turning around and finally looking inside your own bag. In the next part, we will explore the difficult and liberating process of integrating the shadow. We have now arrived at the heart of the matter. The way out of the prison of shame is not to build a stronger mask. It is not to become better at hiding your shadow. And it is not to get better at projecting your unwanted parts onto others. The only way out is through. The only cure for shame is the courageous and lifelong process that Jung called integration. What does integration mean? In the simplest possible terms, it means you stop running, you stop pretending, you consciously and deliberately turn around, take the heavy bag off your back, open it up, and look at what is inside. It is the act of bringing the unconscious contents of the shadow into the light of your conscious awareness. It is about looking at the parts of yourself that you have rejected, denied, and been ashamed of, and saying, for the first time, this is me too. This is not an easy process. It is, in fact, the most difficult work a human being can do. Because when you open that bag, you will not find pretty things. You will find the anger you were taught was bad. You will find the neediness you were taught was weak. You will find the ambition you were taught was selfish. You will find the sexuality you were taught was dirty. You will find your envy, your rage, your laziness, your fear, your vulnerability. You will find all the messy, contradictory, and imperfect parts that did not fit into the neat, clean, acceptable image of your persona. And your first instinct will be to slam the bag shut and run away. But if you can find the courage to stay, if you can find the compassion to simply look at these parts without judgment, something miraculous begins to happen. You realize that these monsters in your shadow are not actually monsters. They are simply parts of your own psychic energy that have been distorted because they have been repressed. That monsters of anger, when brought into the light, is not the desire to destroy, it is the energy of setting boundaries, of protecting yourself, of saying no. That monster of neediness is not a sign of weakness. It is the deeply human capacity for connection and intimacy. That monster of ambition is not just selfishness, it is your will to power, your desire to create and to have an impact on the world. The shadow, Jung taught, is not just a repository of evil. It is the source of our vitality, our creativity, our authenticity, and our power. It is like a rich, dark soil. By trying to live only in the light of your persona, you have been trying to grow a tree without its roots, and you are wondering why you feel so weak and ungrounded. To integrate the shadow is to reclaim these lost parts of yourself. It is to own your anger, so that it can become a source of strength instead of passive aggression. It is to own your vulnerability, so that it can become a source of true connection instead of a secret shame. It is to own your ambition, so that it can become a creative force instead of a source of envy. This process dissolves the power of shame. Why? Because shame can only exist when there is a secret, when you are hiding something. But when you consciously own all the parts of yourself, when you can look at your own darkness without flinching, there is nothing left to hide. There is nothing left for the world to expose. You take away its power to shame you because you are no longer ashamed of yourself. You become whole. You become real. You may not be as nice or as perfect as your persona pretended to be, but you will be infinitely more powerful, more authentic, and more alive. But what does this integrated person look like? How do they live? In our final part, we will explore the result of this journey, the creation of an authentic and unshakable self. We have journeyed into the dark basement of the soul and faced the contents of the shadow. We have seen how the exhausting work of maintaining the persona creates the very shame we are trying to avoid. We have understood that the only way out is the courageous work of integration. So what is on the other side? What is the result of this painful, lifelong process? The result is the birth of an authentic individual, a person who has become whole. This person is not a saint. They are not perfect. They have not eliminated their darkness. They have simply stopped being at war with it. They have achieved a kind of inner peace that is not based on the absence of conflict, but on the integration of opposites. They are both strong and vulnerable, both compassionate and capable of anger, both independent and able to be intimate. They have become a union of the persona and the shadow, and in this union, they have found a new and unshakable center of gravity. What does this look like in everyday life? It looks like a person who is no longer a puppet of other people's opinions. The approval of others is pleasant, but it is not necessary because they have learned to approve of themselves. The disapproval of others is unpleasant, but it is not devastating because they are no longer terrified of the parts of themselves that others might judge. They have already faced those parts themselves, and they have survived. They have taken away the world's power to define them. This person moves with a different kind of energy. The frantic, anxious energy of the shame-based person is replaced by a calm, grounded presence. They do not need to be the loudest person in the room because they are no longer desperate to prove their worth. They do not need to constantly please others because they are no longer terrified of rejection. They can say no without guilt, and they can say yes with their whole heart. Their actions are not born from a place of fear and obligation, but from a place of authentic desire and inner truth. This is the process Jung called individuation. It is the journey of becoming who you truly are, not who your parents wanted you to be, not who society told you to be, but the unique, unrepeatable individual that you were always meant to become. It is the hardest journey in the world, and it is a lonely one. As you become more authentic, you will inevitably find that you no longer fit into the neat boxes that others have prepared for you. Some people will be threatened by your newfound wholeness. They will miss the old, predictable, easy-to-manipulate version of you. You will lose relationships that were based on your inauthenticity. But what you gain is something priceless. You gain yourself. You gain a solidity, a rootedness, a sense of peace that does not depend on external circumstances. You are no longer a leaf in the wind, blown about by every passing criticism or compliment. You have become the tree itself, rooted deep in the dark, rich soil of your own accepted shadow, reaching for the light with the strength of your own integrated being. You have cured the secret sickness. You have escaped the prison of shame. Now, look at your own life. Look at the mask you wear. Look at the heavy bag you carry. Are you tired of the performance? Are you tired of the fear? Are you ready to begin the courageous work of turning around and facing yourself in all your messy, beautiful, and terrible wholeness? Comment below. I own my shadow. This is not just a phrase, it is a declaration of peace in your own inner civil war. It is the beginning of your own journey of individuation. This is the most important work you will ever do. Do not let this understanding remain a mere intellectual concept. The next video is essential. It will give you the first practical, concrete steps you can take to begin this process of integration in your own life. The journey is long, but it is the only one that leads to a life worth living. You must begin. See you there.